Hey, good afternoon. Bill O'Leary coming to you live. Legacy Planning Law Group. I'm an estate and elder law attorney, and I'm coming to you live as part of our Thirsty Thursday series, where we talk each week about a different topic that we see in our estate planning and elder practice. So, if you're thirsting for knowledge, you've come to the right place, as I'm fond of saying. Today's topic: should I get a prenup? Should I get a prenup? So, what is a prenup? It's really more formally called a prenuptial agreement, and what it does is it sort of lays out how the assets, both current assets and future assets, are going to be divvied up if the spouses get divorced or at the death of the first spouse. You know, money has a way of sort of, I don't know, stirring up emotions and rivalries, and future problems can be headed off before they occur with a prenup. Okay, so do you need one? That's the question. There seems to be two schools of thought. You know, one school says yes, you should, that you can never be too careful. And this school of thought says that having these conversations, on the contrary to what you might think, is not going to ruin your relationship, but in fact could actually make it stronger. You know, these people would say that a side benefit of getting a prenup is it actually forces the couple to get into the nitty-gritty details of their finances and how they might think and think differently about money. So you get it all out on the table. You know, after all, they would say if you can't talk about money to the person you're about to marry, then you might be doomed for failure, because money is going to ruin the relationship more than anything else. So now the other school of thought says no. It says, look, hey, what it basically does is it shows you don't trust the person. And this, I think, school of thought tends to be a little bit more traditional. They say, look, talking about this is nothing short of a buzzkill, I guess. So which school is right for you? Well, it's hard for me to answer that for you, because it depends on sort of your worldview, what your view of the world is. Only you can answer that. But I do want to sort of talk about, okay, if you decide that a prenup is right for you, if you want to get a prenup, what are some things to think about? What are some things to think about? Well, first of all, each spouse has to fully disclose all of their assets and debts, and particularly if it's a second marriage that you're in and you're older. You both most likely have established sort of separate financial lives. And so as your lives are combined now in getting married, you both need to know exactly how much money the other person owns, how many assets the other person's own, what assets they own, and how much debt each may owe. Talk about what's fair to each of you. Most of the time, one spouse, will be entering the marriage with more assets than the other. That happens quite often. So determining what is fair to each of you is very, very important. Also, talk about, okay, what assets are we going to go ahead and combine, and what assets are we going to keep separate? Will each of you pay for your children's care, or will, all of that care be paid out of just one pool of money? Who is going to pay for the routine expenses like clothes and food and extracurricular activities, vacations, that sort of thing? Are these funds going to come out of like a blended resource or separate money? Also, decide, how are you going to deal with maybe any financial imbalances, if you will, if one spouse and their extended family has more resources than the other one does. Think about other things like big ticket items, maybe buying cars for the kids, and saving up for kids' college as well. How is that going to be funded? Then also think about, okay, in the event of your death, when you die, how will let's say your life insurance be distributed? More than likely, if this is a second marriage, you're going to want your children from your previous marriage to receive at least some portion of that money. It's also very important to consider and think about your estate plan as part of this discussion. It's important to make sure that any inheritance that you pass on goes to the right people. You want your spouse to get it? Do you want some of it sort of reserved for your children from your previous marriage? That's where careful estate planning comes in, and it often involves putting in place a trust, what's called a living trust. So Think about, I don't know, for example, do you want to leave an inheritance, again, as I said, to the kids from the previous marriage? If these things are not clearly laid out beforehand, it can create problems. It can create division, among family members that might end up sort of, metastasizing and becoming a permanent condition. And then don't forget about retirement. You each need to be saving for retirement, make it a top priority. Are you going to fund retirement individually or jointly, or maybe through a combination of both? What I find that retirement sort of funds often become a hot topic during divorce proceedings. And finally, and not least of which, a prenuptial agreement will help protect you against certain of your spouse's debts. You can specify in this agreement which debts belong to you, which belong to your spouse, and navigate through that possible confusion. The prenup can be written to protect your spouse from your debts and vice versa. So you don't want your credit to be impacted from somebody else's mistakes, and you don't want to be paying someone else's bills. So once you work through these details and you do that together and you're ready to enter into a prenup, here are the steps to follow. First, get a lawyer to help with the prenup. While it might be tempting, to download some sort of form from the internet, a lot of times those prenup agreements do not stand up in court later because you didn't meet all of the legal requirements. And each spouse should have their own separate attorney. If you're both using the same attorney, the agreement, the prenup could be undone down the road. So that's sort of advice number one, get an attorney. Number two, read over the details. Once the prenup's been sort of drawn up, read it over carefully to make sure that you understand all of the details. Legal jargon can be challenging to understand, so take the time to talk it over with your lawyer. And then the third piece of advice, don't rush into it. Like marriage, you don't want to rush into a marriage, don't rush into a prenup. Don't do it on the way to the church. Ideally, it should occur really about 3 to 4 months before the marriage. Although certainly it has to be closer, no less than 30 days is sort of a rule of thumb. You don't want it again on the eve of the wedding. Otherwise, if it's challenged in court later, there may be questions around whether you were rushed into it, whether you were doing it freely, and therefore whether it's valid. That could be questioned. So, now, what if you're already married, but you don't have a prenup agreement? Well, it's not too late. If you still want something like this, you can get something very similar. It's called a postnup, a postnuptial agreement, an agreement you enter into after you've gotten married. So, again, as you might imagine, it might be harder, though, waiting until after you've gotten married to get that in place. It might be harder to convince your spouse to do a postnup after you've gotten married, because they may no longer have the incentive. Hey, you've agreed to marry them. So that's what's called a postnup agreement. So if you'd like to know more about whether you should get a prenup and perhaps how we can help, love to talk to you. Have my team talk to you as part of our discovery phone call process. We do offer a free 15-minute discovery phone call, which you can schedule right here on the Facebook page. Go to the Book Now button, or just Google us, LegacyPlanningLawGroup.com. And again, the purpose for this call is really to start a conversation to see whether we would be a good fit, and for us to better understand what your concern is, to see if we can help you. Okay, so in closing, if you've enjoyed this video and the things that I've said, please like this video. Please like this on Facebook and share this, all the better. So I hope you've enjoyed this talk on should I get a prenup. I'm going to be giving another talk next Thursday about the same time, again on a different topic relating to wills and trust and elder law and so forth. Next Thursday is part of our Thursday series. So if you're thirsting for knowledge, you've come to the right place. So Bill O'Leary signing off on behalf of everybody here at the office. Go make it a great day and make it a better world.